say anything that will tarnish my 4,000-year-old reputation.
Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the year 2020 and to our wonderful home here at Cape Albeon.
Who's that?
It's okay. I'm on the screen in front of you.
What screen?
Just look straight ahead. See, I'm waving at you.
Okay. I see you now. Now this is really strange though. Is this some kind of magic trick?
Oh no, it's what we call technology now. And thank you so much for being willing to share your story and some insights that might help us today with all the problems we're facing, a pandemic and racism, just to name a couple.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Ever since you contacted me last month, Lee, I've been thinking about your question of how my life experiences might help you deal with your problems of today. I've had a lot of experiences, you know. You know, I lived 127 years. Huh, how about that? I don't think you all have that kind of longevity.
No, not lifespans these days are nowhere near that.
Well, where do you want me to start, Lee?
Sarah, I'm sure anything you have to share with us will be a treasure. Just start talking. I won't interrupt unless you have a question for me, okay?
Okay. I'm sure you have all heard of me. My story comes from the first book of the Bible, Genesis. I had a very famous husband. His name was Abraham, or Abe. Abe, as I affectionately have called him. During this interview, you will sometimes hear me call him Abram, sometimes Abraham, and sometimes Abe. He's all in one and the same man to me. And oh, what a man he is. I also had two famous sons, Isaac and Ishmael. I'll talk more about those men later, but let's start with my story. The most famous thing about me, and what I'm most proud of, and something that changed the course of history, is that when I was 90 years old, I had a baby. Yes, you heard me right. At 90 years old, I had a baby. Now, if that doesn't make you believe in miracles, nothing will. Did you know that this was the first biblical account of a miracle birth? How about that? But wait, it gets even better. Abe was almost 100 when I got pregnant. And ladies, that's really a miracle, you have to agree. But there are so many other very important things about me you should know. Without me, there'd be no Judaism, no Christianity, and no Islam. And I'll get more into that in a minute. But let's start at the beginning. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my life.
We're all listening.
You know, me as Sarah, and my husband as Abraham, but those weren't our original names. We were born into this life as Sarai and Abram. But after Abram's covenant with God, our names were changed to Abraham and Sarah, father and mother of nations. But before I get into that story, let me give you a little family history. We were Indo-Europeans and believed in many gods. Actually, Abe and I were half brother and sister who married. That's probably shocking to you. That doesn't happen. But you know, although it does sound weird, it was once pretty common. We had different mothers, but the same father, Tehran. Now I'll tell you all something I bet you don't know. Tehran, our dad, was a ninth descendant of Noah. You know, that same Noah who built the ark. How about that for a little trivia? Our family made a living by selling idols. After all, we in our community believed in many gods. So the idol business was pretty lucrative. It's pretty ironic considering that after his encounter with God, my Abe was the first to teach there is only one God. There are a lot of things that happened in my life, a lot of twists and turns, and it would take a long time to share it all with you here, but I'm going to share the part of my life that might be relevant to what's going on now. Plus, it makes an interesting story. Here goes. Our family was living regular lives, and then one day out of the blue, Abram had a call from God. Yes, you heard me right, a call from God. It was pretty shocking for him because, as I said, we believed in many gods. But this was different. Abe knew right away that this God was the one true God. This was the beginning of what you all call monotheism. That is a belief in only one God. I'm sure many of you have heard the story in the Bible. Here's what it says in the book of Genesis. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. Well, of course, that meant I would be the mother of nations. Oh, please, please, how could that be? By this time, I'm already 65, and Abe is 75. But Abe said, we're going. Okay, none of us argued with him, so we took off, not knowing where we were headed. But Abe said he was obeying this one God he now believed in. We had an entourage. We had Abe, our father, and our nephew Lot and his wife. And I'm sure you've all heard of Lot's wife, the one who was turned into a pillar of salt. Wow, well that's another story for another day. Anyway, we got sidetracked and spent some time in a place called Haran. This is where Abe and I finally got married. It was also where our dad died. Then it was on to Canaan. A drought hit there, and we had to go to Egypt to escape it. We stayed there for 10 years. By this time, I was getting pretty discouraged. According to God, Abe was to be the father of nations, and me, the mother of nations. Years were passing, and I still wasn't pregnant. I was also disgraced. You see, at that time, women were not important unless they had a son to carry on their husband's lineage. Lee, I need to take a break for a minute. May I have a drink of water?
Oh, of course. Let me turn the camera off. Here you are, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you. But what is this?
It's water.
I know, but what's it in?
Oh, I see. It's in a plastic bottle.
Strange plastic. Ooh, I didn't know what that is. I usually drink from a clay cup. But I'm here to talk about more important things than what I drink water from.
Sarah, just take your time, and whenever you're ready, I'll turn the camera back on and we'll continue.
Okay, I'm ready. Well, I waited all those years of waiting for God's promise. You know, the promise that he made that Abe and I would be the father and the mother of nations. I was discouraged. The years were passing by, and I wasn't getting any younger. I tell you, it was a difficult time for me. I wanted a child. I wanted a child to care for so badly that I did the only thing I could think of. I arranged for Abram to be with my maid Hagar, with the hopes that she would become pregnant. Could you imagine? Now, don't look so shocked. But it wasn't that uncommon in my day. That is, if you could have become pregnant. Hagar was a beautiful Egyptian woman. Just for a moment, I thought, what if Abe would really fall for her, though? Then I remembered that Abe really loved me. So I went ahead with the plan and got the two of them together. Well, Hagar got pregnant and had a son. She named him Ishmael. I really did love that little boy, and he brought so much happiness to Abe and me. One evening, we were visited by three men, messengers from God, and I overheard them tell Abe that I would have a child. Really? After all these years? I didn't believe it anymore. I laughed. I was now almost 90 years old, and Abe was almost 100. Wouldn't you know that God's promise that I would be the mother of nations came about? 1 year later, Abe and I had a son, and we named him Isaac, which means One day, I overheard Ishmael teasing Isaac. He told him that he was the firstborn and would get twice Abraham's inheritance. That did it. No one would take my child's inheritance. I went to Abe and I told him he had to send Hagar and Ishmael away. Well, he wasn't very happy about it. But I wore him down and he finally gave in. Years later, it was Ishmael who was considered to be a prophet and was an ancestor to Muhammad. So, through his lineage came the religion of Islam. It was through my son Isaac and his son Jacob that came the 12 tribes of Israel, the root of Judaism. And we know from Judaism, through the lineage of David, came Jesus and Christianity. So you see what I started? Now you might ask, what has this to do with you? Well, our stories, those of us in the Bible, are all your stories too. You need to look for the deeper meaning. Take the story off the pages and make them a part of your life.
Sarah, can you help us do that?
I'll give you some thoughts and ideas, sure. But it's up to your time and civilization to make things work. From what I hear, you all are making a mess of things, and you need to do better. You need to do much, much better. You see the story of my life I just shared with you? Our story, our time, our walk with God, our struggle with faith and doubt. So although I can't specifically address your problems, I can tell you what got us through. When preachers, like Chaplain Lee, preach about us, and when Bible scholars write about us, they preach and write about faith, our faith. Lee, you've given me time to tell my story and some insights that I've had about faith. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Well, yes, I do. Why do we need faith? Why?
You ask why? Well, it gives us our life focus, and it helps us see what is possible. Whatever we focus on, that is, whatever we give our energy to, our attention to, our time to, that is what becomes our faith. And listen carefully, everyone. Whatever we have faith in determines what becomes possible in our life and in our world. So, it's like this. If we focus our energy, our attention, our time on fear, on anger, on hatred, on a belief that one of us is superior to another, well, then that becomes our belief. What we have faith in. From that, then we create a world of fear, anger, hatred, and prejudice. It's very much like what you all have been doing here. But hey, it's not up to me to judge you all. I'm just here sharing my story and some ideas. So on the other hand, if our energy, our attention, and our time is focused on God's goodness, on His love, on the equality and oneness of all of God's children in the world, then that becomes our belief. What we have faith in, it becomes what is possible to us. In my story, I began to fear. I feared. I was getting too old to carry out God's promise. I had faith in fear rather than the promise of God. That's why I turned to Hagar to give us a child. But listen, I just think about this, and I want you to think about this. Perhaps some needs of faith were sown in me after the visit of the three messengers. Remember the ones I overheard saying that I could have a son? Remember that? Well, even though I laughed, I believe it planted a seed of faith again for me in God's promise that I would be the mother of nations. It was a year later that I gave birth to Isaac. Is this making any sense to you, Lee?
Yes, very much, yes.
So I wonder, had Abe and I not stepped out in faith and obeyed God, would Abe have been the father of nations? Would I have been the mother of nations? Without our ancestors, Isaac, Jacob, the children of Israel, how would the world look today? I wonder about that. But it was God's plan, and we did our part. We had to have faith and follow that faith. It's the same with your life and with the world. Spend time in prayer with God to get an understanding of His plan for you. Listen to His guidance and do His will. Don't focus on what's bad. Of course, acknowledge it and work to make it better. But it's important to focus and to hold on to the possibility of what can be right. In regards to COVID-19, what we are dealing with now, the focus is on how many people are saying and believing. We're all in this together. The Cape Albeon community of residents and staff have been all compliant in making sure everyone stays healthy and safe. Focus on the wonderful work going on to contain this virus everywhere. Have faith and see that it is possible to find a cure, a vaccine that is so needed. In regards to racism, focus on how many people are now waking up to see how people of color have been discriminated against and brutalized. Have faith and see that it is possible for Dr. King's message, I have a dream, to become a dream that can come true. Just like Abe and I changed the course of history by following God's guidance and having faith, so could you. Imagine, just imagine, what you all could do to change the course of history by having faith in God's goodness and by seeing the possibility of creating a beautiful and just world. I would like to leave you with these beautiful words written by the Apostle Paul. He lived 2,000 years after me, but I love and believe these beautiful words from the Philippians in the New Testament. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, anything excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Good gracious, I sound like a preacher.
Love it, love it. As we say in our culture, Sarah, you go, girl. Thank you so very much for sharing your story and your wisdom with us.
Well, I hope I've helped you, Lee, have a better understanding of faith and how it can help you make the world a better place. And I would be happy to come back and share some other stories with you. So for now, I'd like to say goodbye.
Goodbye, Sarah, and safe travels back 4,000 years.